From mountains of trash to air so toxic you can't breathe today, we're revealing the 18 dirtiest countries in the world. Welcome to Watch the Globe, your ultimate travel guide to uncovering the hidden gems of our incredible planet. Let's dive in to discover the 18 dirtiest countries in the world in 2024. Number 1. Bangladesh. Kicking off our list at number 1 is Bangladesh, a country grappling with severe pollution issues. Dhaka, the capital, consistently ranks among the world's most polluted cities, with an average air quality index, AQI, often exceeding 200, levels deemed very unhealthy by the World Health Organization, WHO. This level of air pollution is known to exacerbate respiratory conditions like asthma and bronchitis among the population, contributing to higher healthcare costs and lower quality of life. The Buriganga River, once the lifeblood of the city, is now a toxic sludge filled with industrial waste and sewage, which has a devastating effect on local ecosystems and human health. Polluted water sources lead to widespread diseases, including cholera and dysentery, particularly in impoverished areas. For tourists, this means avoiding certain areas, particularly during the winter months when pollution peaks. Wearing masks and staying indoors on high pollution days are recommended precautions. Also, bottled water is a must to avoid waterborne diseases. Number 2. Pakistan. Next on our list is Pakistan, where pollution levels have reached alarming heights. Lahore, the country's second largest city, often ranks in the top 10 for global air pollution, with AQI levels regularly hitting hazardous levels above 300. The thick smog that blankets the city for much of the year is linked to a range of health problems, from respiratory diseases to heart conditions. This pollution crisis has led to an increase in premature deaths, with studies estimating that air pollution contributes to more than 128,000 deaths annually in Pakistan. Water pollution is also rampant, with over 80% of the drinking water in rural areas considered unsafe due to contamination from industrial waste and agricultural runoff. Tourists should be cautious when consuming water and consider using water purification tablets or bottled water during their stay. Additionally, Lahore's smoggy conditions can significantly impair visibility, making sightseeing less enjoyable. The heavy pollution impacts both the mental and physical health of the local population, contributing to a decreased quality of life and reduced economic productivity. Number 3. Nepal. Nepal, home to the majestic Himalayas, also finds itself on this list due to severe pollution problems. Kathmandu, the capital, struggles with an average AQI of 170, primarily due to vehicle emissions and dust from unpaved roads. This has led to a sharp increase in respiratory issues among the population, particularly in children and the elderly. The lack of proper waste disposal systems means that trash often ends up in rivers and on the streets, contributing to waterborne diseases that affect tens of thousands of people each year. For tourists, this pollution can exacerbate respiratory issues, particularly during the dry season. Trekking routes, including the famous Everest Base Camp, are not immune, with litter becoming a growing problem as tourist numbers increase. This not only tarnishes the natural beauty of these sites but also poses risks to the local wildlife that can ingest or become entangled in waste. Number 4. India. At number 4, we have India, a country known for its rich culture and history but also notorious for its pollution issues. India is home to 22 of the world's 30 most polluted cities, including Delhi, Kanpur, and Varanasi. Delhi, in particular, often experiences AQI levels above 400, making it nearly impossible to breathe without discomfort. The city's residents face increased risks of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, and the heavy smog has been linked to a decline in lung function among children. Beyond air pollution, India's rivers, including the sacred Ganges, are heavily polluted with industrial waste and untreated sewage, leading to the proliferation of waterborne diseases like diarrhea and hepatitis. Open defecation remains a significant problem, particularly in rural areas, affecting over 150 million people. This practice not only contaminates water sources but also contributes to the spread of diseases that disproportionately affect children, resulting in high rates of infant mortality in some regions. For tourists, the health risks associated with waterborne diseases and air pollution are real concerns. Masks, hand sanitizers, and bottled water are essential items for anyone traveling to India. Additionally, it's wise to avoid eating street food unless it's from a reputable source, as the sanitation standards can be questionable. Before we move on to number 5, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you like this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Number 5. China. China, with its rapid industrialization, has paid a heavy environmental price. The country is home to 15 of the 30 most polluted cities in the world, including Beijing and Zhengzhou. The infamous Beijing smog often pushes AQI levels over 300, making outdoor activities hazardous. Long-term exposure to such high levels of pollution has been linked to lung cancer, stroke, and heart disease, contributing to over 1.2 million premature deaths annually in China. The country's rivers are also suffering. The Yangtze River, the longest in Asia, is heavily polluted by industrial waste, impacting the millions who rely on it for drinking water, fishing, and agriculture. The pollution of these vital water sources has led to outbreaks of diseases such as typhoid and cholera in rural communities. Tourists visiting major cities should be prepared for limited visibility and respiratory discomfort, especially during the winter months when coal burning increases. It's advisable to monitor air quality apps and plan indoor activities on high pollution days. For those planning to visit rural areas or undertake river cruises, it's essential to be aware of the potential health risks associated with water pollution. China's environmental challenges are vast, but so are its efforts to combat them. What do you think is the most effective solution to reduce pollution in countries like China? Comment below with your thoughts. Your insights might just spark an important conversation. Number 6. Nigeria. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, faces severe environmental challenges, particularly in its urban centers. Lagos, with an AQI often exceeding 150, struggles with waste management, with garbage piling up in streets and waterways. The poor waste disposal system has led to an increase in vector-borne diseases such as malaria and cholera, particularly in slum areas where sanitation facilities are lacking. The Niger Delta, once a biodiversity hotspot, has been devastated by over 13,000 recorded oil spills since the 1950s, leading to the destruction of livelihoods and widespread health problems. The contamination of water sources in the Delta region has caused severe health issues among the local population, including cancer and birth defects. Tourists should avoid drinking tap water and be cautious when visiting industrial areas. The pollution in Lagos can also make city tours less enjoyable, so consider visiting during the rainy season when air quality slightly improves. However, the wet season brings its own challenges, such as flooding, which can exacerbate the spread of diseases. Number 7. Indonesia. Indonesia, an archipelago of over 17,000 islands, is known for its stunning natural beauty. However, this beauty is under threat from pollution. Jakarta, the capital, frequently experiences AQI levels above 200, primarily due to vehicle emissions and forest fires. These fires, often started to clear land for agriculture, release massive amounts of carbon dioxide and particulate matter into the air, contributing to respiratory problems and environmental degradation. The country's plastic waste crisis is alarming, with an estimated 3.2 million tons of plastic waste entering the oceans annually. This has devastating effects on marine life, with over 100,000 marine animals dying each year from plastic ingestion or entanglement. The pollution of Indonesia's beaches and coral reefs also impacts tourism, with many once pristine destinations now struggling with trash accumulation. Tourists should be aware of the air quality, particularly during the dry season when forest fires in Sumatra and Borneo exacerbate smog conditions. Beaches, particularly in Bali, can also be littered with plastic waste, which might detract from the overall experience. Eco-conscious travelers can help by supporting local initiatives aimed at reducing plastic use and cleaning up the environment. Number 8. Philippines. The Philippines, another country with breathtaking landscapes, is also battling severe pollution. Manila, the capital, often sees AQI levels reaching unhealthy categories, with air pollution primarily driven by vehicle emissions and industrial activity. This has led to a rise in respiratory illnesses among the population, particularly among children and the elderly. The Pasig River, running through Manila, is so polluted that it's considered biologically dead, with little to no aquatic life. The lack of proper waste management systems means that tons of garbage, including plastics and hazardous waste, end up in the river, contributing to waterborne diseases and other health issues in the communities living along its banks. Tourists should avoid swimming in or consuming water from local rivers and lakes. In urban areas, the air pollution might cause respiratory issues, so it's advisable to stay indoors during high pollution days. For those visiting the country's beautiful islands, it's crucial to be mindful of the environmental impact of tourism and participate in eco-friendly activities that support local conservation efforts. Pollution is a global issue, but the solutions start with us. What steps are you taking in your own life to reduce pollution and protect the environment? Share your tips and experiences in the comments below. Let's learn from each other and make a difference. Number 9. Russia. Russia, the largest country in the world, is not immune to pollution problems. Norilsk, in Siberia, is one of the most polluted places on Earth, with life expectancy in the city's industrial area 10 years lower than the Russian average. The air in Norilsk is thick with sulfur dioxide, leading to chronic respiratory conditions among the population. The environmental damage is so extensive that satellite images show a 30-kilometer radius around the city where no vegetation grows. Moscow and St. Petersburg also experience air pollution issues, with AQI levels occasionally reaching unhealthy categories. The smog in these cities is primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activities, leading to a significant increase in asthma cases and other respiratory ailments. Tourists should be cautious when visiting industrial areas, particularly in Siberia, and consider the impact of pollution on outdoor activities. The environmental degradation in Russia has also led to the contamination of water supplies, making bottled water a safer option. The pollution in major cities can make sightseeing less enjoyable, so it's advisable to visit during the spring or autumn when air quality is typically better. Number 10. Brazil. Brazil, home to the Amazon rainforest, is facing an environmental crisis of its own. Deforestation rates have skyrocketed, with over 1 million hectares of forest lost in 2023 alone. This deforestation contributes to air pollution and climate change, impacting the health of millions. The loss of trees has also led to a decrease in biodiversity, with countless species now at risk of extinction. Urban areas like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro frequently suffer from poor air quality, with AQI levels reaching unhealthy levels during the dry season. The burning of forests and the use of fossil fuels contribute to smog that can cause respiratory problems, particularly among vulnerable populations such as children and the elderly. Tourists should be mindful of the environmental impact of their activities, particularly when visiting the Amazon, and consider eco-friendly tours that support conservation efforts. In cities, it's advisable to avoid outdoor activities during high pollution days and to use air purifiers in accommodations. Brazil's water pollution also presents risks, so it's advisable to avoid drinking tap water and be cautious with street food. Number 11. Mexico. Mexico, with its rich cultural heritage and beautiful landscapes, is also on the list due to its environmental challenges. Mexico City, one of the largest cities in the world, frequently experiences AQI levels above 150, primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The city's smog season, from November to February, sees pollution levels spike, making outdoor activities less enjoyable. The pollution crisis in Mexico City has led to a rise in respiratory illnesses, including asthma and bronchitis, particularly among children and the elderly. The poor air quality has also been linked to cardiovascular diseases and premature deaths, with an estimated 14,000 people dying annually from air pollution-related causes in the city. Tourists should plan their visits outside this period if possible and be cautious when visiting areas near factories or industrial zones. The country's water pollution also presents risks, so it's advisable to avoid drinking tap water and be cautious with street food. For those interested in exploring Mexico's natural beauty, eco-friendly tours and accommodations that prioritize sustainability are recommended. Have you ever visited a country where pollution impacted your experience? How did you cope? Share your stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Number 12. Egypt. Egypt, known for its ancient history and iconic landmarks, is also struggling with pollution. Cairo, the capital, regularly experiences AQI levels above 200, with the city often covered in a thick layer of smog. This persistent air pollution has led to a rise in respiratory illnesses, particularly among children, and is a contributing factor to the high rates of lung cancer in the region. The Nile River, essential for the country's agriculture, is heavily polluted with industrial waste and untreated sewage, making it a breeding ground for diseases like bilharzia and typhoid. The pollution of this critical water source not only affects human health but also threatens Egypt's agricultural output, which is vital for the country's food security. Tourists should avoid consuming tap water and consider using air purifiers in their accommodations. The pollution in Cairo can also make visiting outdoor sites, like the pyramids of Giza, less pleasant, so it's advisable to visit during the cooler months when pollution levels are slightly lower. For those interested in exploring the Nile, it's important to choose eco-friendly tours that prioritize environmental conservation. Number 13. South Africa. South Africa, with its diverse landscapes and rich biodiversity, is facing significant environmental challenges. Johannesburg and Pretoria often experience AQI levels exceeding 150, primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The poor air quality in these cities has led to an increase in respiratory diseases, including asthma and chronic bronchitis, particularly in children and the elderly. The country's water resources are also under threat, with pollution from mining operations contaminating rivers and groundwater. This has resulted in the spread of diseases like cholera and typhoid, particularly in rural communities that lack access to clean drinking water. The contamination of water supplies has also impacted agriculture, leading to food insecurity in some regions. Tourists should be cautious when visiting industrial areas and consider the environmental impact when planning activities. The pollution can also affect wildlife viewing experiences, so it's essential to choose eco-friendly tours that promote conservation. For those visiting South Africa's national parks and reserves, it's important to follow responsible tourism practices to minimize your impact on the environment. Number 14. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, a country with vast deserts and limited natural resources, faces significant environmental challenges. Riyadh and Jeddah frequently experience AQI levels in the unhealthy range, largely due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The country's reliance on desalination plants to meet water needs contributes to environmental pollution, particularly in the form of brine discharge into the sea, which harms marine life. The air pollution in Saudi Arabia has been linked to an increase in respiratory diseases, including asthma and lung infections, particularly among children. The harsh environmental conditions, including frequent dust storms, exacerbate these health issues and contribute to a lower quality of life for the population. Tourists should be cautious of the air quality, particularly during the summer months when dust storms can exacerbate pollution levels. It's also advisable to limit outdoor activities during high pollution days and to use air purifiers in accommodations. For those visiting the country's historical and cultural sites, it's important to be aware of the environmental challenges and to support sustainable tourism initiatives that aim to protect the country's fragile ecosystems. Number 15. Turkey. Turkey, a country that straddles Europe and Asia, is facing growing environmental challenges. Istanbul and Ankara frequently experience AQI levels in the unhealthy range, primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The smog that blankets these cities is linked to a rise in respiratory diseases, including asthma and chronic bronchitis, particularly among children and the elderly. The country's water resources are also under threat, with pollution from industrial activities and agricultural runoff contaminating rivers and lakes. This has led to the spread of waterborne diseases, particularly in rural areas where access to clean drinking water is limited. The pollution of Turkey's water sources also threatens its agricultural output, which is critical for the country's food security. Tourists should be cautious when visiting industrial areas and consider the environmental impact when planning activities. The pollution in major cities can make sightseeing less enjoyable, so it's advisable to visit during the spring or autumn when air quality is typically better. For those interested in exploring Turkey's natural beauty, eco-friendly tours and accommodations that prioritize sustainability are recommended. Number 16. Iran. Iran, a country with a rich history and culture, is also facing significant environmental challenges. Tehran, the capital, frequently experiences AQI levels in the unhealthy range, primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The smog that blankets the city is linked to a rise in respiratory diseases, including asthma and lung infections, particularly among children and the elderly. The country's water resources are also under threat, with pollution from industrial activities and agricultural runoff contaminating rivers and lakes. This has led to the spread of waterborne diseases, particularly in rural areas where access to clean drinking water is limited. The pollution of Iran's water sources also threatens its agricultural output, which is critical for the country's food security. Tourists should be cautious when visiting industrial areas and consider the environmental impact when planning activities. The pollution in major cities can make sightseeing less enjoyable, so it's advisable to visit during the spring or autumn when air quality is typically better. For those interested in exploring Iran's rich cultural heritage, it's important to be aware of the environmental challenges and to support sustainable tourism initiatives that aim to protect the country's fragile ecosystems. Number 17. Iraq. Iraq, a country that has experienced decades of conflict, is also facing severe environmental challenges. Baghdad and Basra frequently experience AQI levels in the unhealthy range, primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The country's water resources are also under threat, with pollution from industrial activities and agricultural runoff contaminating rivers and lakes. This has led to the spread of waterborne diseases, particularly in rural areas where access to clean drinking water is limited. The pollution of Iraq's water sources also threatens its agricultural output, which is critical for the country's food security. Visitors to Iraq should be mindful of pollution, especially in industrial areas, which can affect the sightseeing experience. To enjoy better air quality, plan trips in the spring or autumn. If you're exploring Iraq's cultural heritage, consider the environmental challenges and support sustainable tourism to help preserve the country's delicate ecosystems. Number 18. Afghanistan. Afghanistan, a country that has experienced decades of conflict, is also facing severe environmental challenges. Kabul and Herat frequently experience AQI levels in the unhealthy range, primarily due to vehicle emissions and industrial activity. The country's water resources are also under threat, with pollution from industrial activities and agricultural runoff contaminating rivers and lakes. This has led to the spread of waterborne diseases, particularly in rural areas where access to clean drinking water is limited. The pollution of Afghanistan's water sources also threatens its agricultural output, which is critical for the country's food security. Tourists should be mindful of pollution in industrial areas and plan activities with the environment in mind. For a better experience, visit major cities in spring or autumn when air quality improves. If exploring Afghanistan's cultural heritage, support sustainable tourism to help protect its fragile ecosystems. We've covered 18 of the world's dirtiest countries, but the fight against pollution is far from over. What are your thoughts on the environmental challenges these countries face? Which country's situation surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this important conversation. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Watch the Globe for more insights into the world's most intriguing and often hidden realities.